How magic works. The topic of today's video is, well, how magic works. So, magic can basically be developed into three different categories, or four if you like. The first of which deals with mental level effects. This largely involves the use of focusing and releasing, and impacts how you perceive the world at a mental level. The next level is involving sensation or astral energy. In this case, you're largely training the breath. Now, whether this is through breath retention or holding on to a weight or walking, kind of depends upon how you want to do it. The next level impacts the vital, etheric, or more physical level. In this case, you're going to use more physical training, or as is more common, you're going to take something, say a liquid or a solid like food, charge it with subtle energy, and then imbibe or eat it. Now, what this does is it allows the energy to penetrate very deeply into the body and make more physical level changes. Whether that involves your health or athletic performance really depends upon how you want to apply it. Now, the fourth level would involve a true physical level effect, such as setting a sheet of paper on fire, floating a pencil, something of this nature. Now, you hear a lot of stories about this kind of thing, and there is some anecdotal evidence to indicate that people occasionally pull this off. But truthfully, I've never found an individual who could consciously do this upon demand with any regularity. Now, whether this has something to do with the astrological alignment, or the ambient energies involved, or the use of an egregore or stored form of power to make this happen, is a bit of a question. But again, to be very clear, I personally cannot do things like this, and I don't know of anybody who can upon demand on a regular basis. In the event it does happen, it seems to be more of an accident more than anything else. So those are the four levels of using magic. Now, again, magic in this case really deals with making a change in line with your will. And that's probably the best way to look at it. Additionally, magic in general is most useful for changing something about yourself versus doing it to somebody else. Now, there are examples of this, such as the magic of crowds, which is generally done via transmission ability or pushing energy into a crowd of people and then having a change occur in alignment with whatever you're trying to do, whether that's making people like you or having an out-of-body experience or feeling an energy of some sort or another is relative to whatever you're trying to do. The most common examples of this involve rock concerts or political rallies where the crowd gets really wound up and ends up acting in accordance with the speaker's wishes. So that's basically how magic works. Now, what often does not get said in this process is the amount of effort it takes a practitioner over time to be able to do any of these things. As a general rule, to develop a given energy, or if you will, sensation, can take anywhere between 20 and 100 hours of consistent practice in order to do this upon demand. That's not to say it can't happen accidentally or at a high level temporarily, but for the most part, it's going to take between that 20 and 100 hours to be able to do it whenever you want to do it. Now, outside of this, you can get into things like alchemy, which generally involves the charging of different substances, usually an alcohol-based substance. Now, the advantage to doing this is by charging a substance, it defeats all of your external self-protective mechanisms. This is the reason why treating yourself with energy, as anybody who's ever been involved with energetic healing, is generally not nearly as efficient as having someone else do this to you, because these subtle energies involved in the protection of the body make it very hard for someone to do this to themselves. On the other hand, you can easily train someone to do something like esoteric, energetic, or sensation-based healing, usually in a couple hundred hours of consistent practice, and this ability will last the individual pretty much for the rest of their lives. Now, that said, that initial 400 or so hours worth of training is just going to result in a baseline ability. It's not going to result in a comprehensive ability. To engage a comprehensive ability to program things very specifically takes a lot more effort, usually a couple thousand hours of total experience and training. And the reason for this is very simple. There are at least 4 to 5 levels of reality that we understand. There's physical, your foot or a table. There's sensation or energy or astral level effects. There are, again, mental level effects. And following this, you deal with things like Akasha or the void, that thing out of which everything springs. And finally, complete reality, or what some refer to as non-dual light. Learning to identify and create these forces specifically takes quite a bit of time. Most of my students gain the ability to do this at about the 6-month point of generally spending at least 2 to 4 hours a day in practice. Now, once you can identify the different levels of reality clearly, this allows you to engage the forces at those different levels of reality with a great deal of repeatability. But again, it takes a while. Also keep in mind this tends to involve quite a great deal of physical, or what we call body training. For whatever reason, you have to train the ligaments, tendons, and fascia tissue in the body in order to work with these things at a high level of energy, if you will. Now, again, it varies by individual, and some people are more gifted at one thing or more gifted at another. And also keep in mind, this doesn't get into more esoteric abilities such as clairvoyance or subtle vision, clairaudience, subtle sense of hearing. As a general rule, the easiest of these subtle abilities to develop is what we call clairsentience, or subtle sense of touch. It simply allows you to identify energy very easily. Now, that said, you can go quite a way in your practice just using clairsentience. The downside to this is if you don't have very good clairaudience or clairvoyance, you won't be able to have a conversation with an entity or be able to see or hear the phenomena involved with something very well. What will end up happening is you'll simply know how to do things and you won't know why. Now, again, this doesn't have to do with purely imagining things either. You will be able to do things with this. Just your ability to apply it may be a bit limited. Now, depending upon what you're doing, such as esoteric healing or something like the martial arts, this may not in fact matter. You can just use a high degree of clairsentience along with sensation or energy-based practices, what we call the astral, and you can smash bricks with your hands and treat people for disease and do all kinds of things of that nature fairly well. What you won't be able to do is fine-tune the effect. So, that's a basic, very simple discussion on what magic is and how it works. That said, if you want to learn more about this, check out 60skills.com or go to my Patreon site where you can view over 120 different videos on various topics involving how to train magic, meditation, and yogic practice. Otherwise, as usual, train hard and be well.